Right, let's return now to the Victorian election and the near-decade-old car crash that again today is dogging the Premier, Daniel Andrews.
Oh, look, I've gone to these issues in great detail over 10 years now. I've spoken about it, Kat's spoken about it. I don't really have anything to add. These matters were reviewed.
Ryan Muleman was 15 when he was critically injured after being hit by the Premier's taxpayer-funded car. The Premier's wife says she was driving. And as he lay on the ground with a punctured lung, broken ribs and internal bleeding, instead of rendering assistance, Andrews and his wife, says the victim, well, they got out of the car and they were, quote, yelling at each other, that they were, in his words, slow in helping him. He said, I saw a man and a woman looking down at me. I remember that they were standing next to me and looking down with horrified looks on their faces. They did not bend down to assist me. Now, that version of events from the victim has been backed up by a witness, Jane Crittenden, who says she was the first on the scene. And today, for the first time, the pictures of the Andrews car, a large Ford Territory involved in the collision, have been made public. As you can see, the damage is extensive. A smashed windscreen where young Ryan is likely to have been thrown on impact, and lower on the vehicle, damage to the front right-hand side, the bumper bar, and of course there, the quarter panel. Clearly, looking at that, this wasn't a case of a bike scraping the side of a car. There's been one hell of an impact here. And looking at these never-before published pictures, a few questions come to mind for the Premier. If your car was so damaged, how, Premier, did you safely drive it away? Why did you drive it away? We know you did. We know you left the scene of the accident as Ryan lay on the ground because you've admitted that. We know, of course, you later returned. Why didn't Victoria Police impound your car for forensic tests? Weren't you aware, Premier, that under Victorian law, Section 61 of the Victorian Road Safety Act says the driver of a vehicle involved in an accident where a person is injured must immediately render such assistance as he or she can? How is that consistent with Ryan Muleman's version of events? These car pictures published today are the first time Ryan's father, Peter Muleman, says he's seen these photographs. Why didn't the police give them to us when we asked for the crash report, says the father. At the Premier's press conference in 2017, he said, my son had run into his car. Clearly these photos, said the father, show how his car hit my son. Peter Muleman went further, saying there was no T-bone to the side of the car. We are seriously shocked by the lies that have been told about the circumstances of the crash. Today, the Herald Sun reported it now has a copy of the full police report into the crash, investigation notes, these never-before-seen photographs and witness statements. Again, there's a few things here that the lawyer in me finds fairly curious. Why wasn't the injured young cyclist Ryan ever formally interviewed by Victoria Police? Why no statement from him? Why was the Premier not formally interviewed himself until the 5th of February, almost a month after the crash? In his statement, he says he and his wife rendered assistance as required under the law, but the victim and a witness say that's not true. Ryan Muleman has now engaged a lawyer. He's finally got access to these police files after nearly a decade, and he's also hired a former Victorian Crown prosecutor, James Bowen, as a consultant on his case. Now, it's Bowen and what he said that's some of the most interesting information so far. Remember, Bowen is a former Crown prosecutor. He also used to lecture on traffic collision investigations at nowhere else other than Victoria Police Academy. He says, and I quote, normal police investigative procedures would require the impounding of the Andrews Ford Territory and the removal of it on the back of a truck for expert forensic examination in Melbourne. This did not happen. The alleged driver should have been breath tested as required by regulation. This didn't happen. That a statement was never taken from the victim, says the Crown prosecutor, former Crown prosecutor, is an extraordinary departure, he says, from the normal police investigative procedure. And the fact that the damaged Ford was never forensically examined, says Bowen, and I quote, makes reconstructing the circumstances of the collision far more difficult, and the omission appears to have been deliberate. That last bit again, the omission appears to have been deliberate. And this is a bloke, as I said, that used to lecture at the Victoria Police Academy, former Crown prosecutor. But there's more. Ryan Muleman is now fighting for access to his old legal files as well. He's got the police ones, but now he's after everything from the law firm Slater and Gordon. Now they say they won't be able to hand over everything just now. They need another 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Meaning he'll get the files after the Victorian election. I've said before, governance in Victoria is rotten. And as we know, a fish rots from its head.